Good morning, everyone. I got into work today at Patience and I heard that our Mercedes camera car that we've been working on for the past couple of months is all buttoned up, cleaned up, and ready to get picked up today. So I'm gonna head outside and see if we can link up with Gary. And I wanna dedicate this episode to just walking around and talking about all of the things we've done to that car, because the modifications are really extensive in order to have it be used for what it's meant to be used for, which is a camera rig for movie scenes and commercials and really high-end things. So it's a cool project, and before it leaves, I want to give you all the highlights. Let's get out there and check it out. This car looks awesome. Obviously, this is not the way that it came in. If you guys haven't caught the last couple of episodes that we put out about it, please check them out on our YouTube page. And while you're there, subscribe to it. This is the type of stuff that we're known for doing, and it's really an intensive build. It's been here, Gary, for what, a few months now?
Yep.
And so I want to break this thing down, or better yet, have the guy that built it break this thing down. So why don't we start with the exterior and work our way into the really fun stuff. So what's kind of cool here is I recently started working at Patience Metal Fab a couple of months ago, and this car was already in progress. So it's been a bit of a learning lesson and catch up for me to try and figure out what this is, what its purpose, and what type of work has gone into it. So first and foremost, when I arrived on the scene, this car was white, correct?
Yep.
So why did we turn it black?
So in the film industry, any reflection, anything that comes off the car affects their actual ability to catch a good picture. So we do all these cars in a matte black. They absorb 100% of the light. There's no reflection. There's nothing that's showing up in their filming. And that comes all the way down to the actual 3D printed headlight covers that we use. You'll notice all the lights on the car have covers on them like this to keep zero light from coming through, because these cars do run a daytime running light, other illumination that would potentially get picked up in the filming.
And it's Velcroed on, so obviously you can take them off to make it street legal, because right now you'd probably get in trouble with that. And we should mention it's a black wrap, and so it's not painted. You want to mention who did the wrap for us?
Yeah, Driven MN, Ethan over there, he really killed it. I mean, the jams are all done. There's not a spot of white on this thing that you'll find at all.
Thanks, Ethan. It is an awesome job. If you guys don't know about his business, I'll leave a link in our description. He does a lot of little jobs for us here and there, and there's a reason why we choose him, because the work is awesome. So I'll do a close-up and show off some of the stuff he's done on this. Okay, so the next most obvious thing besides the color is this roof rack up here. Obviously, this is all custom stuff, and really the intention for this vehicle, as I said, it's a camera car. So it's gonna have a big camera boom on top of this. And if you guys haven't seen what that looks like, because usually it's a behind the scenes type vehicle, we'll post a link to Moto Crane, who designs and creates the actual camera rig for these that's gonna go on top of this car. So check out the link in the description. You get an idea of what it's gonna look like when it's fully assembled. But before you do that, let Gary tell you about exactly what we've done up here in order to make that happen. Gary, what do we got going on up here?
So, just like you said, that rack is designed to house Moto Crane's Hyper. They make a couple different camera rigs, starting with their Radical and their Ultra, which are lighter weight. They don't require quite as much structure tied into the car. The Hyper is the no-holds-barred big boy. It's heavy, it's big, it takes a lot of stress on the car. So what we actually do is we cut through the roof of the car and tie into the rollover structure that's in the car from the factory. So the cross beams are what the pillars actually tie into, and then the rack is built to bolt on top of these stumps. Everything's sealed nicely, but it definitely makes for a very stout mounting point. The rack itself is triangulated underneath. It weighs upwards of 150 pounds. It's definitely not a small object, but it can be used for a lot of utility. Like you see, we got the lights mounted on it. Most of these companies now, we've started outfitting, they've got 4 small spotter cameras up on top to run as well, which is what you see this kind of stuff. The cables, the wiring, all running up to the top for.
Yeah, and this is one of the coolest features. I see the cables running into the car and this custom plate that has kind of a pass-through here. So super cool, all the LED lighting. And then up top, if you can see, is a diamond plate top. This thing is so beefy and heavy duty, you could literally put a car on top of it and drive off with it. And that was the whole idea. You don't want to be in the middle of a $1 million film shoot and have trouble with the camera rig on top of it. So yeah, this thing is not going anywhere. Obviously, all the metal fabrication on this is impressive, but the wiring work is also equally as impressive. So Gary, can you comment on exactly what we're looking at right here?
Yep, so this was kind of a learning curve for us as we got into camera cars. Coming from the motorsports world, we're used to looming and tucking everything. In the film world, things need to be accessible. They have issues with SDI cables. They need to be easily replaceable on the scene. So what we do is the nice big pass-through, easy to run cables in and out of. There's actually redundant cables in here. So you have the one main camera that's on hyper, and then you have 4 spotter cameras on here. So you only need 5 cables running to the top. There's actually 10 here. Every camera gets a redundant cable on it, so that if there's an issue mid-film, they just swap cable ends, they're good to go. No issues, no delays.
That's awesome, and we'll show you where these cables end up in essentially the cameraman's cockpit in here. But before you do that, there's another really cool feature on this side, because my first question was, well, how do you get up there? Do you have to crawl up the car? And thanks to this little custom step side, I suppose, this is how you would do it. So you grab the camera, and I'm gonna use it for the first time.
Up he goes. Flip-flops and all.
These are my work boots. This type of item definitely falls under the fab part of Patience Metal Fab. So what all went into making this? Obviously, these are kind of off-the-shelf foot plates, but this certainly isn't, and how did we adhere it on?
Well, the goal with this is obviously to be able to carry a heavier or lighter guy. So we ran a big load spreader plate on it to really disperse the load. If you were to mount these directly to the sheet metal, over time they would probably distort the sheet metal, even pull out. So these are anchored to a piece of 12 gauge sheet metal that's then, as you can see, fully riveted into the sheet metal of the car. We had the biggest guy in the shop. He'll remain nameless right now, but he was jumping on these and there was no issue.
Right, and this is all CNC plasma cut here, and kind of a design, but also maybe a little bit of weight savings at the same time.
Absolutely.
We've got rivets, and then these bolt straight to riv nuts inside.
Yep, and the riv nuts actually sandwich not only the load spreader plate, but the sheet metal as well. So not only do the rivets actually mount the load spreader plate, the riv nuts that these bolt into also.
So, in other words, this thing is not going anywhere. I thought we were building a camera car, not a street sweeper. What do we got going on right here?
Basically, just feedback from a couple of these that we've built is that guys need to stop the dust if they're shooting on a dirt road or just a dirty road. So it's just back there to basically cut any sort of dust cloud or accumulation you get that would affect, again, the shot. I mean, everything with this, at the end of the day, is all about giving them the means to get the best shot they possibly can.
We've gone over the entire exterior of the car, kind of the functionality of all of these bits and pieces, the wrap and the step side and the roof rack on top. But really the main event, so to speak, is going to be on the inside of the car. I mentioned there's a cameraman cockpit. In a lot of kind of informal camera cars, you might be sitting in the passenger seat with your rig and everything's kind of going back and forth. Here we've designed an actual station for the cameraman to fit in, because they might be in there for hours at a time, and arguably that is the most important job of this car. I mean, obviously it has to function, but if you can't get the shot, then it's all for nothing. So, Gary, you want to do the honors and pop the hatch? Gary, obviously I want you to talk about everything that's going on in here, but I think both me and the audience don't want to hear it from out there. We want you to get in the seat where the cameraman's going to be.
Into the hot seat.
Literally into the hot seat. And just talk about some of the stuff you got. First and foremost, I see an armrest, but that's not just an armrest.
Nope. That's actually the battery box. So Because of all the electronics on the car, we do run an auxiliary battery system in these. So there's a Blue Top Optima in here. We do have a Blue Sea charge relay right here. This actually separates the two batteries and makes it so that the primary battery always has a full charge before the secondary battery. There is manual control on this as well. So if you do manually want to trigger the batteries to tie together, it can be done.
Okay, and then what do we got over here? I assume this is what the batteries operate?
Yep, so this is the Bantam X. This is their S pod. So this is actually what controls all of the power accessories that we've added to the car. The nice thing is they're controlled through this touch screen right here. And as you'll see a little bit later, there's another one up in the front. So all the features on the car, on the roof, all the monitors that are added, the DTAP, the XLR powers that we put in these, all can be controlled, turned on and off from one point.
Here I'm seeing the Hyper logo that is going to be the camera rig on top of this car, so I assume that controls the whole thing, right?
Yep, so one of the cool things that Motocrane does with their Hyper units is it's all self-powered. This unit right here handles all of the communication to the roof. There'll be a single data cable that'll go from this box through the pass-through up and tie into the turret on the roof. So all communication, all power goes through it. This thing gets charged just by plugging it into a 110 outlet. You've got 4 batteries in here. These are your actual battery power gauges right there.
And all of that wiring with the redundant cables coming through the pass-through here. Let's see.
Yep, that actually goes to this guy. So this is your Blackmagic Design SDI splitter. So your input camera feed will come into this, the main camera and the 4 spot cameras will come into this, and then this will split up amongst all the monitors. One thing you don't see in this particular car right now are the monitors. Some vehicles that we build, the customers have us mount their monitors, others they just want provisions. That's what we got going on in this one.
The electronics are very impressive, but what I enjoy most about this is the versatility in some of the metal fabrication that we did. So you have this little rig that's going to hold the screens or accessories or whatever you want with all of these threaded portions, and obviously that all had to be made from scratch. So not only does it look really cool, especially with the powder on it, but it's super functional. And speaking of functionality, I've been wondering what this little button here is. I think it's the Ejecto-Ceto button. So Gary, should we try that?
Ejecto-Ceto, cuz.
I didn't do anything. It didn't eject my boss out of the Mercedes. But what exactly is it for?
So on these cars, there is no way for the guy in the back to get out of the car when it's closed. There's no little release inside. So you can imagine the effect that riding in the back of this has. If this guy's got to get out and say go find a bush real quick, he needs to be able to get out of the car. So we wire in a release from the back. He can hit that, hatch opens from inside.
Let's see if that works. Close this thing up and let's see if he can get out, or otherwise you're spending the rest of the day in there.
There it is.
In layman's terms, I called this the cameraman cockpit. That's not exactly what it is, because this whole setup takes like 3 or 4 people to run outside of the cameraman and the driver. So can you kind of break down where everyone sits?
Yeah, so this is actually the focal operator is how they use this back. We put a race tech seat in here to really anchor the guy in place, because he's got to focus on one of the most important jobs, and that's getting the focus of the camera set for the shoot. So as Art said, these take a lot of people to operate, usually a 5-man crew. So we can kind of walk around to the front and I can show you where the other stations are in the car.
What's back here?
So this is a really versatile space. You have one single bar going across. You can mount multiple monitors. You can mount joysticks. A lot of times what we see back here is you'll have a gimbal operator, because basically what you need is you need one guy to operate the focus. You need one guy to operate the gimbal, which is the actual rotation up and down, side to side of the camera. You need one guy to operate the actual hyper arm to follow. You need one guy to drive, and then a lot of times you may have a director or an additional operator inside the car. So we really aim to build these things to have the most versatility to allow the end user to really kind of cater each position to who they want in there.
And while they're doing that, they're doing it high quality AMG leather. So it's just a nice interior to be in, and everything's integrated around that. We didn't have to strip this car out and make it a kind of a bad place to sit for hours on end. It's comfy and it's functional. To the untrained eye, the front is looking pretty stock. So what here should we talk about?
So if you actually look above you here, these guys wanted to be able to outfit the front of the car with one monitor up here, and then if you look on the drivers, we've got the other Bantam X controller up here. That way the driver, as well as the guy in the back, can operate the accessories on the car, the floodlights, the cameras, all that stuff. One thing you do notice a lot of is we've got these wires just run. Again, this is catered to this specific customer. Some customers want us to actually terminate all their power supplies with DTAP or XLR ends. These guys wanted to handle their own cables, so we ran them. You can see we ran them nice and clean inside, nice grommeted exits out of the pillars. And so they will actually go in and terminate their cables. But what they will have is they'll have a dedicated DTAP and a dedicated XLR power at each station that they can then split, because each circuit is run on a 10 or 15 amp power supply.
Yeah, and I love little details like that, because there's so much new wiring run through this car, but you couldn't tell. So when I said in the beginning it looks stock up here, kind of OEM, I really meant that as a compliment, because you cannot tell all of these little things until you start looking for them. Everything's tucked up, everything's black, all the wiring is loomed and in these little pass-throughs. So good job on planning all this out. I wouldn't want to do it, that's for sure.
We got a good crew of guys, you know. I mean, everybody kind of specializes in their own thing. So this is our 4th car we've built now, and as we continue to build them, we kind of continue to learn more about the industry, what people are looking for in specific, and look forward to building more of these things.
One of the biggest problems we have at a fabrication shop is trying to sum up a months-long project in a 10 to 15-minute video. But I think Gary especially did a really great job, and I actually learned a lot about what went into making this car. It's good to see the finished product, and it's good to see the process. And I mentioned we did film some of that stuff, so there should be a couple episodes, if you're seeing this one, about the process. And the really cool thing is we have another camera car. So this one's leaving today, but we've got something not quite as extensive as this build, but in the shop. And I believe it's a M3 BMW, that's what I heard.
Yep, M3 BMW. Golden Peaks is the film company that runs that. So yes, that's our next one.
Yeah, so that's going to be super exciting. We'll do some sort of video series on that. But before we get to that, I just want to thank all the companies that we worked with for this car. And better Gary tell you than me on all the people that have had a hand in this build.
So Driven MN, doing an awesome wrap, pillars and everything, knocked it out of the park. Magnetic Coat, as always, those guys do all our powder coating. They're awesome, quick turnarounds, always meeting our completely unrealistic timelines. Moto Crane, obviously, for kind of plugging us into this industry. We've had a ton of fun working with those guys and working with these vehicles. Gear 7, Shift Dynamics, for letting us actually build them a cool rig like this. We've got a few others that are out there on the road, and I'm sure Art can kind of throw some links in the bottom to check those out as well.
I absolutely will. So check them out. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to the page. Follow us on all our socials. We would really appreciate that. Stay tuned for much more of these cool builds. Thank you, guys.